Coming up on this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society, we switch back to 2017. It's dangerous to go alone, so the Nintendo Cartridge Society goes with you. Welcome to Nintendo Cartridge Society. My name is Patrick Ellers, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Mark Mitchell. Mark, how's it going?
It's going great. You know how there's like those things that gets stuck in your head for whatever reason, like commercial jingles or stuff like that.
Sure.
So, do you remember the 1 year ago, the episode we put out for the 4th of July was about ranking like our favorite Nintendo kids, or maybe not even ranking, maybe we were just talking about them.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Mm-hmm.
And the reason I remember it is because either our cold open or the way we pitched it or something like that was like, we celebrate the country's independence by ranking our favorite Nintendo dependents. And for whatever reason, like that has stuck in my head forever. And so I will always commemorate the 4th of July for that reason.
It's good wordplay. It's better than the joke we just did at the top of the show.
They're all good jokes.
They're all good jokes. Look, if this show has demonstrated nothing else, it's that there's no such thing as a bad joke. You just tell it and move on. You have a great time. Speaking of things that you can just move on and have a great time with, my copy of Sonic Forces. Would you like to borrow it? You can. All you gotta do is email us at Nintendo Cartridge Society at gmail.com and reveal to us a mailing address where we can send you my copy of this game for the Switch. You play it for as long as you want. You send it back. It doesn't cost you anything. It's the perfect borrowing program.
Yeah, you must reveal your address to us. Don't make us guess.
Yes.
If we were to do a program where we just went through the phone book and started with like Arthur Adams and then was just like mailing it one at a time to each person, that would be an entirely different program. Potentially still a good program, but not the program we have going on.
We would have to see if the program was a success. I would recommend changing its name from the Sonic Forces Borrowing Program to the Guess My Address Sonic Forces Borrowing Program. Because the guessing the address seems like a bigger feature of it, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, also like an important part, like another important distinction would be like, right now, people who sign up for the Sonic Forces Borrowing Program are voluntarily requesting Sonic Forces. And I think
100%.
Like, if you are sending Sonic Forces unwillingly to somebody through the mail or unwittingly, you are weaponizing Sonic Forces.
Right. And look, we don't want to impose content on anyone. We're not U2, okay? You opt into Nintendo Cartridge Society at every junction, and we are glad that you do. Mark, should we get into our main topic today?
Yes. Yeah, let's do it.
So perhaps a little bit of explanation is in order. All of last month, all of June, we were breaking down old Nintendo E3 presentations. These are big stage shows happening at or around E3, and they were all around the reveal of or if not reveal, like the first deep dive into new hardware. We did the DS one, we did the Wii, we did the 3DS, and we did the Wii U. So basically all of the big hardware reveals of the last 2 decades, with the exception, of course, of the Switch. Now, the Switch was not revealed at an E3 presentation. And in fact, we talked about the presentation, the January 2017 presentation, on the 17th episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society. It exists in the archives. I urge you not to go back and listen to it, and instead listen to this episode right here and now. I don't think that episode is bad. Mark, do you think that episode's bad?
I think we'll never find out, because
Great point.
I pledge to never listen to it, and I think our audience is also pledging to never listen to it.
And look, it's a good, solid pledge. It's as good as the Sonic Forces borrowing program. But so today we look in discussing the Wii U reveal. You and I were getting a little bit down on it in some places, and mostly just being like, man, it seems like all they wanted to have and reveal was the Switch, and the Wii U is like so close to being that in so many ways, and just isn't. So we got a suggestion from a listener on Twitter, Jason at Timmins 45 on Twitter. He said, hey, why don't you do the Switch reveal? Why don't you just talk about that? And that's a great idea. So that's what we're doing.
I have
We're going back in time.
so many. I had forgotten like so much of what happened here, but it brought back like so many good memories. So this was such a good idea. Thank you so much, Jason. I'm so glad we did this.
Yeah, great idea. We're not gonna we didn't do any like predictions about this. Again, there's a whole other episode of us talking about this, and even predicting the week before it happened what we thought it was going to be. So anyway, we are just going to dive right in with what this presentation was. But before so you mentioned that you really enjoyed watching this presentation this time. Just like broad strokes, like what sort of thing struck you about this?
So it's interesting, like a lot of it at the beginning and at the end are like really like nuts and bolts. Like they spend a lot of time, just like, again, we take for granted now, it's like, yeah, the Switch is old hat, like we understand it, we know what the Joy-Con is, all that kind of stuff, but they really take their time in doing that. But I think the part that was really fun for me was seeing all the different like Nintendo personalities on stage. And like, it was only a few years ago, but I was like weirdly nostalgic. I was like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, Kimishima!" I totally kind of like forgot about
I
your
out
like
at Kimishima.
Yeah, about your time as Nintendo's president, and just seeing like Takahashi, Koizumi, like the reveal of ARMS, just like all this stuff. It was so much fun. It was such like, I think because it was only a few years ago, I thought that I like remembered most of it, but they like started playing the trailer for ARMS and I was like, what is this? I could not figure it out for the life of me.
Yeah. Well, and also like as he's leading up to it, he's like, we've got 2 games to show you, one that's one that everyone can play and one that's a little deeper. And I was like, oh, what is this deeper one going to be? What are they going to show? Yeah, so I think the thing that struck me immediately about this is that we don't often see presentations from Nintendo that are this Japanese and this geared towards a Japanese audience. Usually the E3 presentations, they know they're in LA, right? Like Reggie's taking the lead and like, he's marketing it like he's marketing the Bigfoot pizza, right? And this feels a lot more like it is Japanese game developers talking to Japanese game players and the Japanese gaming market. And like there's a moment in the presentation where someone I will encounter it in the notes, but Bill Trinen comes out and is translating into Japanese.
Yeah,
and I was just like, oh yeah, of course he can do that.
Yeah, well, it's starting at the very beginning where you're in this large conference hall. And it's filled with people, and it's playing like this like electronic music, and there's like lasers and lights going off, and then they're showing people in the audience, and it's like really buttoned up Japanese businessmen. Like it's such a different vibe from like E3, right? Like I do feel like this presentation, there was so much riding on the Switch. Like Nintendo was in such transition; it was coming out of the Wii U, and I think like, even more than, we talked about in the E3 presentations, like Nintendo having a little bit of a chip on its shoulder going into like the DS era and all that kind of stuff, feeling like they had a lot to prove. And I feel like they felt the pressure in this one, but they didn't have that like sense of like combativeness. Like it was all just like, hey, we're like really open, and here's like what we were really excited about this, and we just want to show it off.
Yeah, I mean, there was no point in this presentation where they were like posturing or showing themselves as like, leaders in the handheld market, or like, even the sort of like Nintendo's always been about innovation, even though the Switch is the most innovative like console they've ever put out. that like I don't think anyone says innovation in this. I don't think they say that like Nintendo is coming up with new ways to play. Like it's really just showing you what the Switch can do, and then I guess telling you what the Switch can do, and then showing you the Switch doing it is the majority of this presentation.
It's also just a little bit bizarre watching it because the majority of it is in Japanese, and then you're getting like a translator, and so having that like one level removed makes some of it like extremely bizarre, which like some of it we'll get into a little bit later, but
Yeah.
it adds a layer of confusion that is like it super fun. It makes the whole thing really fun.
Yeah, I think there's one of the translators who just like was maybe like boxing above his weight or something, and like just couldn't quite keep up with a few of the presenters, especially as they strayed from prepared remarks. But at the risk of getting too specific about something that happens 45 minutes into the presentation, should we start at the tippity top?
Yeah, because again, Tatsumi Kimishima, who was the president of Nintendo in this like transitory period, and
Yes.
I am sad to say I forgot about.
Yeah, I forgot about him too, but he comes out and he's like leading the charge here. The first thing he does is bring up the like kind of quick trailer, the first video that I guess launched in October. That may have been around the time of our second or third episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society, which is outrageous. He's sort of just like giving a state of here's the state of the hype at present. Like if there is any flexing that Nintendo's doing here, it's in this moment, saying there have been a lot of positive responses to the things that we showed in this trailer. And here's what we showed. We showed the Switch, we showed the dock, we showed the Joy-Con grip, we showed 2 Joy-Con controllers and the Pro controller. So they're like all of that. He's like, okay, that's where we are. That's where we're starting. And now we're going to like dig into what makes this thing so special. And the very first thing he does is give the release date, which, Mark, do you remember, was this a bombshell at the time? Because we're in January right now, and the release date is March 3rd. It's 2 months away.
Well,
less than 2 months away.
We knew that it was coming by the end of the fiscal year, unless they were going to delay it again, because we knew that. Like, it was supposed to launch at the end of 2016, and then they delayed it, but they said that it was still coming at the end of fiscal. And it was possible that which means for Nintendo's fiscal year ends at the end of March. So we knew that it was going to release before the end of March, unless they delayed it again. But yeah, but it was still, I mean, it was still like the fact that it was coming the 3rd, the fact that like right out of the gate, like 5 minutes into this presentation, he's like, here's the date, here's the price, right? And like, here's something about like online. They're not saving it to the end. They're like almost like getting that business out of the way.
Yeah.
And then they're getting into like the meat of what makes it interesting.
It's funny that you say that they're not holding it, because there is a date that they hold until the final frame of the presentation, and of course we will get to that when we get to that. But yeah, it's interesting that they start off with such a like straight up, here's when we're putting out the Switch, here's what it costs, and there's a little bit of a pop for the Japanese price. Like there's applause in the crowd. By the time it's translated to dollars, either people have already done the quick math or like nobody cares. But I did think it was interesting that there was a positive reaction for the price as it was listed in Japanese. And then you mentioned the Nintendo Switch Online service. Interesting that this is coming out right away, right? That they're talking about it from the very first like minutes of the presentation, and end up giving a lot of information here that ends up not being true.
Well, at first he was like
partially true.
Yeah, he was like listing the things that it does, but at the end he's like, you'll be able to do this on your smart device, and that's when I was like, yes, that is where the chat comes in. That is where like a lot of this stuff and game invites did end up coming, but only recently. Like, so like I feel like it is mostly true.
Yeah, it is. It's mostly true. It's just so weird to me that like this is one of the first pieces of information that they're putting out about this thing, including like it's free now, but it'll be a pay service in the fall, and they ended up pushing that back like a year. And And so it's an interesting thing to lead with when it seems like they didn't even totally have everything worked out on that front yet.
But I feel like it's a little bit like eating your vegetables up front, where they're just kind of
Sure.
like just taking care of business. Like, we know this is going to be a question about it, so like here's the information that you want, like really clear, or not really clear. There was so much unknown about Nintendo Switch Online, but like here's the information
Yes.
we're going to share right now. And he does that even like again, this is another piece where that I take it for granted now, but he then says like, hey, we're not doing region locking anymore. And
Yeah.
yeah,
So I wanted to talk about this moment where he says, like, we know in the past we've done region locking. We have decided that for Switch we will not. Anyway, moving on. And it's just like, well, hold on, wait a minute. And I don't know that we've ever talked about why Nintendo made that decision to not do a region free console this time around. And I don't know what the reason is.
yeah, I don't really know either, except maybe just the industry had like changed so much, right? Um,
I mean, aren't other like PlayStation 4 that's region locked, right?
no, I don't think so.
Oh, that's region free as well.
Yeah. So I think Nintendo was like the last kind of holdout of region locking. And I feel
Fair.
like it was like one of those holdovers when Nintendo was like, you're going to pay us a ton of money because we're making cartridges, and like that kind of like super hyper competitive stance. And I feel like this was kind of like the last vestiges of that, where they were like, hey, it's a new like world and we're kind of like catching up a little bit.
All right. Well, then that makes sense that he would just say that they were fixing the problem and not addressing because it's been a problem.
Yeah, I feel like it's very similar to what they do in like Apple presentations, where like in this most recent one, they're like, you're going to be able to, they don't mention it. It just shows up in a slide where they're like, yeah, like this thing that really annoyed you, like now you're going to be able to choose which like browser is your like default browser, and choose like the email client. But like we're not going to talk about it because we don't want to like draw a lot of attention to
Right.
it. We're just going to acknowledge that it's a fact, and then we're just going to like move on.
You will fill in the gaps of what problem this solves on your own. And then Shinya Takahashi comes out, and he's one of the like hardware engineers or whatever on the Switch. And he says that the Switch has the DNA of all past Nintendo hardware in its DNA. So, Mark, should we run down these features kind of one by one? Because some of them are ludicrous.
The GameCube one I wrote down especially. I really love that one.
So he starts with the Famicom, in that it has two controllers built into it. Which, okay, yes, true. Not our experience with the NES, but okay. The Game Boy introduces portability. Awesome. The Super NES introducing the X, Y, L, and R buttons, which amazing to think that was an innovation at some point. The four face buttons and then like bumpers is so standard on everything else now that it's amazing that Nintendo had to do that first.
Do you ever look at pictures of like the Game Boy Advance and your mind just breaks a little bit because you're like, how does this only have an A and B?
Only
button?
have two buttons.
Yeah,
it's crazy. It's got bumpers though. And then the Nintendo 64, the analog stick and rumble. The GameCube, here's the first one that really trips my flag of like, okay, guys, obviously it doesn't have to take something from everything. They say the handle, that even then they were figuring out how to make a home console portable. And then he kind of like brushes that off and is like, and then from the DS, the touch screen, from the Wii, motion controls from the Wii U, taking gameplay off the TV. Now, Mark, you mentioned the Game Boy Advance. He does not say anything about the Game Boy Advance, that there's no Game Boy Advance DNA in this. There's no 3DS DNA in this. And criminally, no Virtual Boy DNA in the hardware of the Nintendo Switch. But this is it's a cute little thing to try and like tie all of, or like draw a single straight line through all of Nintendo's development to the Switch.
And it's also very like, we saw a similar thing in when Iwata was showing off the DS for the first time, when he was talking about it, and he talked about how like, hey, like, this is the culmination of Nintendo's previous hardware experiences, and like did a little bit of running down and being like, this is what we took from here, and like all that kind of stuff. So it's interesting to me to see those like kind of like echoes or parallels from their successes in the past. I've got to say, so when Takahashi came out, and every like the next couple of presenters that we see, I talked about before in the E3 presentations how it was just fun to hang out with our friends. And like I totally felt this way with these presenters as well. And I feel like they all had such like very clear personas. Like I feel like Takahashi is kind of like your like nerdy uncle a little bit. Like he probably works for NASA or JPL or something.
Oh, there is no way this is the first hardware presentation he's given. It's just the first one in front of cameras live streaming it to the world. Yeah, well, and so what I really think is interesting about them laying out how the Switch is like the hardware endpoint of Nintendo's journey, and then the rest of the presentation sort of ends up being how the Switch's library is the software endpoint of Nintendo's journey.
Yeah.
And we'll sort of hit on all these points, but like every idea that Nintendo is like really fighting to represent in the presentations that we talked about all last month are just casually mentioned here. A game that you can play with anyone. It's like this brand new IP, like this Splatoon here, Mario, yes, Zelda, of course. Like it's just all it's you could say that it's missing like some elements of like big Nintendo like mythology, but like every type of Nintendo game is represented here, and it's all very exciting. Okay, so from this point we just kind of move on to like a Nintendo hardware trailer, which is sort of just demonstrating the same stuff that they've been talking about, and all just featuring Zelda, right? Just Breath of the Wild is on this thing. Switch and play is what they're talking about, mostly just the ability to go between handheld and playing on the TV, which, as you mentioned, Mark, is such a like table stakes kind of thing when it comes to playing games on Switch now, but was so exciting, and just sort of to have that confirmed for us in this. Like we saw it in that video in October, but to have them like saying it and saying like, we know this is a big deal, and we know this is what makes this thing different, is all super exciting.
It's also such contrast to like last week's Wii U presentation, where like the kind of like the time spent on the Wii U presentation and the Switch presentation is flipped. Like the Switch is such a clear idea that they don't really need to belabor it. Like this is pretty much it. Like the top of this presentation is where they talk about the hardware, and then on it's all basically just like software announcements. Because the idea is so clear and it's so obvious to people what like the appeal is. And it could not be more different than the Wii U presentation, where they had to spend so much time trying to convince people that like this thing like makes sense. And we can't really explain how we're going to use it because we don't even know ourselves, but we just know we have something cool here.
Yeah, and I think some of that is also just, I mean, this presentation, like I just said, is 6 weeks before the machine comes out.
Yeah,
so
that's
like,
true.
Like there was no room for ambiguity. There's no room for like, now these are just demos or like these are just
right.
concept pieces. Like, no, we are putting out a bunch of games in like a month. And so they quickly kind of run down some sort of like features and specs, the 3 different play styles: TV mode, tabletop mode, handheld mode, battery life 3.5 to 6.5 hours, a little generous, but okay. The USB-C charger, the touch screen, Wi-Fi, and local wireless play, connecting up to 8 switches at one time. And that's when Yoshizaki Koizumi comes out and is like, this is my show now. Koizumi owns this show, and I love it.
Oh, he's the total, like, you got Takahashi being your like engineering uncle, and then you have like Koizumi, who like is your super cool, like probably like plays poker for a living uncle.
Yeah, he rides a motorcycle, but has never gotten in an accident. Koizumi comes out and he's like, hey, let me show you the Joy-Cons, and starts off by showing you the Joy-Cons in the kind of nerdiest configuration, them sitting in that Joy-Con grip, and the flash bulbs in the theater go nuts. Everyone wants pictures of Koizumi holding up the Joy-Con grip. He removes both of the Joy-Cons from the grip and is pointing out individual features, including the near field reader for Amiibo, the capture button, which is a cool thing that hadn't been present on Nintendo hardware before, to take screen grabs and eventually video. He points out the individual accelerometers in each of the Joy-Cons, and that each Joy-Con can be used as a fully functional controller. And he claims that they feel very natural in the hand. And I'm not so sure I agree with that last point.
My favorite part of this whole thing is when he's like, yeah, and you can also just play them, like free-handed. So, and they have like a couch set up for him to walk over and lay down on the couch to illustrate like how you could be just like relaxing on the couch but playing games with like two Joy-Con and one in each hand.
He lays on this couch for it's gotta be 2.5 seconds. And someone had to wheel that couch onto the stage and then wheel it away just so we could demonstrate this. Have you do you ever play like that with the Joy-Con separated and just like hands all like thrown all over the place?
No, I for whatever reason I find it really like I am uncoordinated that way. It doesn't feel like if I'm playing a game where like controls matter, like I don't feel like I'm like as in like the zone or as like tight when I'm playing like that.
Totally, 100%. I've played Animal Crossing with the split Joy-Cons. Usually when Sarah is playing with the Pro controller and she like tags me in so I can run around the island with her, then I'll just pull the Joy-Cons off and not go looking for the grip. I'll just play with them in separate hands. But even then, like my hands just sort of end up in my lap next to each other. So like I fake the grip when I don't have it. Then Koizumi, like I said before, is like, okay, so these Joy-Cons allow you to play games in different ways. I'm about to show you 2 games. One is the type of game that you can play with anyone, and the other type of game is a game that requires more depth. Yes.
Before we get there, we would be remiss if we did not talk about the reveal of HD Rumble. Ice cubes, baby.
Oh, yes, that's right. Ice cubes in a glass. That's right. I'm sorry, I went right over it. Also, the IR camera, which can tell if you're doing rock, paper, or scissors with your hand. But yeah, the ice cubes in a glass was like mysterious at the time, right? And one of those things that I'm not sure anyone thought was right. You know what I mean? Or was accurate. That you would actually be able to feel like a simulated different number of cubes in your Joy-Con.
Well, I mean, it is important to one of the games that we're just about to talk about. But I don't know. It's the other thing that was interesting about having Koizumi come out is that like I forgot that he is in charge of Nintendo software now. Like that is his job. Like he's over all of Nintendo software.
Yeah. And actually, I guess I sort of bypassed this whole section here where instead of it being a stage presentation, it goes to video. And again, it's one of these crazy Nintendo things where there's a man on stage presenting information and then the lights go down on him and up on a video of that same man. So, which is just weirdly disorienting. But it is a cool video and they're doing like all these like effects on it, like the this glass of ice and then water, and he takes it and takes a sip. He reveals the blue and red Joy-Con, and he says that the expressiveness that the Joy-Con themselves are expressive, and it's that expressiveness that invites the player to pick up the controller, which is one of the things that they are, and especially as we get into 1-2 Switch here, where they're like leaning into the idea that the controller expresses a part of the gameplay, like in addition to the screen and sound, right? That like that is you're getting information from the controller in like a meaningful way. 1-2 Switch, we're there, right? Gets a weird trailer. Weird on 2 counts. The first being that it starts off as like a sort of self-serious like cowboy like dual high noon situation, and then goes into gameplay, but you wouldn't know that it's gameplay because it's all like actors. Like 1-2-Switch as a game looks so weird that I know I didn't realize that what we were watching was the actual thing that appears on the screen.
Oh yeah, that's a really good point. But that makes sense because like um Koichi Kawamoto, who's the producer of the game and then also just like the general hardware director for Switch. So he comes out to talk about the game, and the part that I forgot that was all like, I remember leaving this presentation or like having watched it and being like, "Oh, that's really interesting," but I don't think about it when I think of 1-2-Switch anymore. Is that the whole idea behind it is like you don't have to look at the game. You set it
Yeah.
up like, but then like you're looking at your opponent through like all the activities you're doing. And I forgot that was like part of the whole pitch.
Yeah, yeah, and it's really interesting. They mention it as they made it as they thought it would be a staple for parties, or for use as an icebreaker. And like, unfortunately, in a party situation, it's just too dang quiet. So much of what 1-2-Switch offers is like you're cued off of the sound, right? Like that's how you know when to draw. That's how you know when to do like so many of the individual things. But like if you're in a party situation, if there's any noise at all, and you've told like everyone else to quiet down so you can play this game, then it's okay. But otherwise, it falls kind of short of that. And really, 1-2-Switch would kind of just be like an interesting like kind of social tech demo more than anything else. But it's cool to see them like lead off with it and know what it is. And the next game, ARMS.
And this was one where like when the trailer starts, it's like like a kind of like muscular man wearing like a suit, button down shirt and a tie comes out, and then this younger woman comes out, and then they just kind of square off for a really long time, and then their arms start going all like springy and they start punching each other. Anyways, the short of this is that when they actually got into the gameplay, I was like, man, like ARMS is a really fun looking game. Like this is a fun world.
Yeah. Yeah, and when that tune kicks in and you're just like, oh yeah, ARMS. And it's cool now to look back at the very first time that we got any indication that there was a game called ARMS. And it's a cool trailer. It's really cute. I like it a lot. Do you have the name of the gentleman that then comes out and is talking about ARMS? I didn't write it down.
Kosuke Yabuki, I think.
Yeah, I believe that's correct. He describes it as a fighting sports game like boxing, but also like shooting, because you're like throwing the punches all the way across the screen. They're really leading with the motion controls here. In fact, I don't know if they mentioned that you can play the game without, like actually punching, but like, I guess that's just not something that in this moment they were concerned about communicating about this thing. I think they were really trying to show off what is, if not good about the Joy-Con, what is unique about them.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And then also getting the information that ARMS releases in the spring, which is very soon.
Yeah, that was one of the fun things about this presentation, was just like through all of it, it's like boom, like there are so many games coming in 2017, and some like would be revealed later that we didn't even know about at the time.
And then they also mentioned that ARMS marks the debut of Nintendo's newest characters. And I just sort of like made a mental note of that because this is also the week now in real life, and not in 2017, but in 2020, that Min Min comes to Smash, like sort of cementing that, like, oh yeah, this was not a weird fever dream we all had together. ARMS is a Nintendo game with Nintendo characters. Next up, Mark. Splatoon 2. Do you want to walk us through what? Well, first they show like a trailer for it, and man, I tell you, I cannot remember what is a new feature or new weapon in Splatoon 2 versus Splatoon 1. But they are making like very specific points to show us so many things in that trailer, and I can't remember why any of them would be special at this point.
Well, it was interesting because I remember leading up to the reveal of the Switch that the rumors was that like Splatoon 2 was potentially not a sequel. It was like a Mario Kart 8 Deluxe type situation where it was like kind of like a deluxe version of the first game. So when it was revealed to be like a full sequel, like a true Splatoon 2, that was like really unexpected and really surprising.
Yeah, it is really. I still sort of feel like it skirts the line between like big overhaul and like a genuine sequel. But it has enough. It has enough to be a genuine sequel. Then Hisashi Nogami comes out and is wearing a lab coat and sunglasses and holding Splat Dualies, the like new dual wielding gun from the game. And he does this whole spiel in character as though he is studying the squids in universe. And it's so weird.
It's
I love
absolutely
it.
delightful. He's a researcher at the Squid Research Lab, and I forgot that this was a bit that he does, and they continue this like later, like when we learn about the game and like have other directs and stuff. This is a bit that like continues, and this is a part where like it is surreal anyways, and it is doubly surreal because of the translator. Because
Yes.
like Nagami is speaking in Japanese, and then there's a translator who's like doing his best to keep up. So like Nagami's up there doing this kind of like and I mean this in like the best way possible because I cannot express how much I enjoyed this, but like kind of like elementary school
Yes.
like presentation assembly like thing up there where he's wearing like a lab coat and at the same time the translator's like struggling to keep up with him. Like there's a part where he goes like Nagami goes like Splatoon 2, and then the translator is like a little bit behind, and then he tries to do it, but he's doing it in his like monotone like translator voice, and it just gives the whole thing this like air of the bizarre that is so much fun.
Well, it's also funny because Nagami does this pose where he's like looking like the number 2, and he does that once and starts a sentence which the translator goes Splatoon 2, and then like Nagami keeps talking and he goes, and then the translator's like, is planned for launch, and then there's another like big pause and he goes, this summer. So like I wonder how much of that was what the dude actually said and how much he was like, this is what I have in my notes. And so I'm gonna assume that he stuck to the script. Anyway, it's all very charming, and I like there's a moment during this where Nagami points out how you use like the mini map in the game, because that was one of the big things that I was sort of reticent about from carrying over from the first game on the Wii U, is that you could teleport to anywhere on the map by looking down at the gamepad and just like tapping it. And so, like, knowing that the Switch would need to work out a solution for that.
Oh, I wondered why he made a big deal about that. That seemed like such a weird function to, like, call out. That makes so much sense.
Yeah, it'd be one of those, like, hyper-specific things like, here's how you do battle in Twilight Princess. Where it's like, okay, guys, move on.
The thing I really loved about this, and really, like, that I liked about the entire Switch presentation is on Tuesday we were talking about, from a listener suggestion, like the beginning of the 2015 E3 presentation where like
2014, I believe.
Oh, was the one that with like where the listener suggested we watch like the first like 10 minutes of it because it had like 2014, but or whichever one it was. But anyways, like the important part was like we talked about how like charming and like funny those presentations were, and like that's what we remember about them. And it is like reassuring in an odd way to me to see like Nintendo's having this big business presentation right in a room that's like full of Japanese businessmen that is basically like, hey, this is our plan for the company. But then they also have like the confidence to just be like, and here's Nagami like coming out dressed in a lab coat and sunglasses, like kind of just like being goofy and weird. And there's something that I really love about that.
Yeah, there's something a little bit like chaotic and a little bit just like you can't control Nintendo. Like they're gonna do this, you know. And then Koizumi like kind of comes out next to tee up the next thing, and he plays into it too. He goes, "Well, what squid you think?" And it's just like, man, that is some forced wordplay, and I don't know how that translates, but. But I appreciate that he's being silly with it as well. But the next trailer that he cues up, man, I was not ready to see the like big reveal trailer for Super Mario Odyssey. And I got so happy when it opened on just like, panning around a calm New Donk City.
Which I think we had seen a glimpse of New Donk City at the October reveal or something. Like we had seen a little bit previously.
Yeah, we had just seen a little bit of that and the Desert Kingdom in the October video, but like it was like less than a second of each.
Yeah, like, and so seeing it all just get blown, and I totally agree with you. Like there are so many good games in this presentation, and it just made me really want to play Odyssey again.
Yeah, me too. Like really, really badly. And all that this trailer does really is show Mario running around the world, jumping and playing awesome Mario music. Like it's and I guess it just by virtue of like sampling so many different areas in Mario Odyssey, it's also showing off the huge variety of art styles in that game. And just like yeah, it's such an impressive showing. I was like moved and was like, I want to play Mario Odyssey again. Like even had the thought of I should go and like delete my save and just start over. And just man, I love that game. And obviously this is a good trailer for it.
Yeah, and it's also like looking back, we see how much it revealed, but at the time how little we knew, because this is like the reveal of Cappy. And the idea that like Mario's hat is a sentient being for this game.
But they're not revealing the capture mechanic here at all. Like the fact that you spend so much of this game taking over different enemy bodies doesn't even come up here. Like all that, like the eyes appear on Mario's hat, and then when we come back, Koizumi is wearing a hat with Mario eyes, with Cappy eyes on it. But like. And they're just like, that's this. Well, I wonder if this means anything. And then they're like, okay, moving on.
I think it's interesting that, like Koizumi, like we talked about, is the head of all software for Nintendo, but that he was also the producer of Mario Odyssey. And he specifically calls out that it's like kind of a return to the more open worldness of Mario 64 and Super Mario Sunshine versus like the Galaxy kind of like more course-based games. Yeah.
And he also mentions that one of their guiding ideas for the game was that they wanted it to feel like when you visit an unknown country for the first time, that there is like a sense of exploration, of discovery, and I think Mario Odyssey definitely delivers on that. It's cool that they are able to like pinpoint that and communicate it in something like this. And then again, holiday 2017 is when they were targeting this game. So it's another like, and you're playing it this year, which is just awesome. Next, a pair of trailers. First for Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and it looks like a Xenoblade Chronicles trailer. I don't really know what else to say about it. And then just the slimmest of teases for Fire Emblem Warriors.
Yeah, that was interesting. What for the Xenoblade Chronicles trailer, what I thought was interesting is that at the time they didn't call it. They just called it Xenoblade 2. There was no like Chronicles in the little
interesting
card that they showed. And it was of course my favorite / least favorite type of RPG trailer, where it's just like non sequiturs being shouted at people. At first I wrote down, I was like, oh, Koei Tecmo, and I couldn't remember if it was a tease for Fire Emblem, like the
Three
next
Houses.
Fire Emblem game, or it turned out to be Fire Emblem Warriors, because when they show the logo, it's all in Japanese. So until somebody actually says like, hey, and this is Fire Emblem Warriors, I was like, oh right, I forgot that game existed.
Well, it also looks like it is either Crom or like one of the. I think it is a character that does not appear in Three Houses that they show. Like it's just like a glimmer. There's like a shield and like the five like kind of gems or whatever they are that like appear on it, and then like a dude holding a sword, but it's like
Hmm.
close up on the hilt in the hand, and then like it gets out of there. So it's sort of just be like, and don't worry, Xenoblade and Fire Emblem are coming to this thing. So anyway, those are just like teases of like other Nintendo first party and what they're working on. And then they mentioned that over 50 companies are working on games for Switch, with over 80 games in development, um, including Square Enix with Dragon Quest X and Dragon Quest XI just in Japan, and then Dragon Quest Heroes 1 and 2. Um, it's weird that they're not weird, but I was surprised to see them talking about Dragon Quest XI in 2017.
Well, we knew that it was coming, or at least it was announced for for NX, like
Oh
way, way,
yeah.
way, lots of like many years ago. So even before the Switch was the Switch or anything, like it was known that Dragon Quest XI was coming, and then we didn't hear anything for a very long time.
Did Dragon Quest X come out in Japan
I think so, yeah,
on
because
Switch?
I think it's on
Okay.
pretty much like I think it's on mobile as well. Like I think
Okay.
10 is still going strong over there.
And they were just like, "Nah, there's no reason for us to bring that to the West."
Yeah, because it was a Wii release originally, and
Wow.
so they've supported it through multiple because it's an MMO, and
Yeah.
yeah, like Dragon Quest isn't big enough. The amount of like translation you would have to do, the servers, like all of that, like there was no real chance that it was going to come make it here.
And then there is a moody trailer for an Atlas game, which ends up being for the new Shin Megami Tensei, which is also a game that hasn't come out yet. Um, but they mentioned that development has only just begun, and so like it's one of those like, so you're lucky to even have this trailer situations. But the trailer is just like kind of a spooky office building, and then like it pans over and there's like a bunch of sexy furries standing over there, like just looking at the camera, and you're like, oh, all right, I don't know what any of this is.
And then like the camera like cuts again, and then it's a dude who I assume that if you're familiar with the Shin Megami Tensei games, you're like, ah, yes, it's that person. But to me, it was just like someone in blue-ish, whitish armor who, you know, like turns to the camera. And yeah, like this is a game where since it's been teased here, there's been a lot of questions of like, we haven't heard anything really since other than, you know, like occasional comments from Atlas that they're working on it. But I guess like it's only been 3 years, really. And if they just started in 2017, it's not that
Yeah.
crazy.
I mean, I think that's the thing to really like keep driving back to is that at the time of this presentation, they had just started working on it. Then the next thing is we go back to Square Enix, and we get a Octopath Traveler trailer. Is this the first time that they're still calling it Project Octopath Traveler? Amazing. But this is the first time we're seeing this game, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, this is the true reveal of it. And yeah, I think it's so funny that it's called Project Octopath Traveler. It reminds me when we saw the Nintendo DS presentation and Reggie was like, and this is releasing in a few months with like a new name and like a real good price. And then it was like, nope, it's just a Nintendo DS. And then for Project Octopath Traveler, they're just like, nope, it's just Octopath Traveler.
Lose the project. And I remember this showing really well at the time, because that art style is stunning. And when you're only looking at it for, like 30 seconds and it's surrounded by all this other sort of more traditional looking stuff, it's amazing. And again, Project Octopath Traveler is a game that no one has ever finished and no one ever will finish it. Then we have a representative from Sega come out and say that he intends to present other games on the platform. It's a real soft commitment, not announcing any games here or anything like that, but just being like, yeah, I'm excited about it as a publisher and as a developer. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, it's like in the previous E3 presentations we watched, they had like a sizzle reel of all these developers like talking about it, and this is like the real life version of that, where they're just like,
Yeah.
and this person's excited, and this person's excited.
Well, let's keep knocking out those individual this persons, and we can talk about how excited they actually are. Next is Todd Howard from Bethesda, who is basically playing out the joke of can you play Skyrim on it, but this time for the Switch. And he mentions that it's good to be working with Nintendo again, as though like there's some sort of like relationship that has either like opened up here or been like bridges that have been mended or forged in the first place. You don't forge a bridge, but I know what I'm saying. And I think that we've seen that from Bethesda, that they've actually been pretty good about supporting the Switch with their current generation software.
Yeah, this was another like one that was really interesting to watch with the benefit of hindsight, because you're like, oh, like even at the time I was like, that's awesome that Skyrim is coming to Switch, like portable Skyrim, that is awesome, that's so exciting. We had no idea that just a few months later they'd be like showing off Doom for it. And yeah, they've been great about like supporting games as close to day and date as they've like been able to, like with the Wolfenstein game, and Doom Eternal is coming. Like Bethesda like actually meant it someday, right? Yeah, theoretically. Which I'm really excited for. Like I am looking forward to that game and playing it on Switch. So yeah, like Bethesda's support has actually been like really cool and impressive.
Yeah, and especially in comparison to a representative that we're going to get to in just a second. First, we have to discuss Suda51 coming out, and the translator being incapable of keeping up with this guy. And it's, do we want to blame the translator? Do we want to blame Suda? It doesn't matter. So little of what Suda is saying actually gets translated to us. Mostly he's just like, hey, there's going to be a new Travis Touchdown game, and then there's an image of Travis Touchdown behind him wearing a shirt that says Travis Strikes Again, or Travis Strikes Back, whatever the name of that game was.
I think it's again, yeah.
Yeah, Travis Strikes Again. And he says, we haven't decided on the title of the game yet, as he's pointing at the name of the game.
It's another Project Octopath Traveler situation.
It totally is. Yeah. Look, once you name something even temporarily, like that's just its name. You start calling it that, you're not going to change that. Everything else is going to sound weird.
I actually remember after this presentation, articles came out where they talked to the translator, and he was saying that it was like Suda was completely off script, and so he was just trying to like do it live, and I think it was really challenging in those situations because Suda's like jumping around and like saying his catchphrase and doing all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Suda jumps out like to scare the audience, and then says, "Oh, I guess it didn't work." So like this poor translator like had his work cut out for him. And then the next presenter here is the dude from EA. Is this the same dude from the E3 Wii U presentation?
No, it's not, and I'm not even sure actually if this guy is at E3 anymore. I think E3 has had, EA. Yeah, is that EA anymore? I think EA has had like multiple regime changes through the years that we've been talking about.
It's another generic old white guy, is what it is.
Who is very tall. He is a very tall. Yeah. My favorite part of this whole thing is that he says that he's like, so Bill Trinan is there translating what this guy Patrick Soderlund is saying, translating it into Japanese for the audience. And so this guy will like say his little bit, and his anecdote is like, I love Nintendo. Like me and my wife gave our son the middle name Luigi, and then we get to like, there's no reaction from the audience, and then you get to have like, you wait a little bit while Bill is translating it to them.
And then they react politely at Luigi. Yeah, and then the actual announcement is just that they're bringing FIFA over, which FIFA is a big franchise, but they're never going to be bringing over like the best version of FIFA. And then obviously like EA support has been pretty anemic for Switch. I know they've committed to releasing 7 or 9 or some number of games on the Switch in 2020, but that's 3 whole years later. So like they were showing up for this presentation, but not really showing up for the first couple years of the system's life.
Yeah, I will say that like it is like I think the reason they brought him in here and why like FIFA is a big deal is because EA totally abandoned Nintendo in the Wii U era.
Yeah.
Right? Like we saw that presentation where they were like, we're putting Madden on here, like all this kind of stuff. And it quickly dried up, and EA had nothing to do with Nintendo's platforms. So to have him be back and be like, "Hey, we're bringing like the biggest franchise we have worldwide to Switch," I can see why like they chose him as a presenter.
It is funny though, and I wonder if like EA is like, yeah, go ahead. It doesn't cost us anything to send a guy to say we're going to put games on the thing, like with no real intention of supporting it in like a meaningful way.
Yeah.
Then we kind of go out here on a sizzle reel of a lot of games, and I forget at this point what is reveal and what is just like part of the milieu at this point. But like we see Mario Kart 8, we see like the battle mode of it. I think that wasn't information we had at that point. Snipper Clips is featured in this reel, and just like a handful of other games, a lot of really good ones, a lot of really fun ones, and I can't remember what was news at the time.
Yeah, I can't either. But yeah, there were a lot of really good ones, and I have to preface that because one thing I would like pulled out from this like surgically, I was like, I think that's Steep. I think that's Ubisoft Steep. That shows up for like 2 seconds in the sizzle reel.
Oh man, Ubisoft is so good at not putting games out.
A port that was announced very early for Switch and has never been released, and rumors are saying that it was just like technically ended up being a mess.
And then the president, whose name is eluding me at this point.
Kimishima.
What's his name? Kimishima comes back out and is I don't know why like bringing the mood down where he's like, now we're going to talk about the product configurations. It's like, what? So basically just telling you what comes in the box.
Yep.
When you buy a Switch, that the Pro Controller you buy separately. It's not super exciting stuff. But then he kicks it over to Nintendo of Europe, who is a representative there, just being like, hey, thanks for watching. I don't have anything to announce or anything cool to say. And I'm about to be clowned out by Reggie Fils-Aimé. And then they kick it over to Nintendo of America, where, of course, Reggie is he's there to, like, burn the house down with excitement because he's like, Breath of the Wild, we know it's still on the way, and we'll talk about its release date in a second. But oh look, Mr. Miyamoto is here, and he's like playing the game, and like, oh, Eiji Aonuma is also here, and it's just like your three best friends hanging out playing the new Zelda game.
I love how Reggie is wearing like a suit jacket. And you know how like politicians will wear like the American flag pin in his lapel? He has like an 8-bit Mario pin. It's very like I'm the ambassador of Nintendo. Yeah.
And he is. And I do feel like I miss his energy a lot, like throughout this thing, but it is amazing to hold him for this moment. And it seems like they're about to give out the release date for Breath of the Wild, which again, we didn't like. This game had been delayed. And so like, we all just want to know when we were going to play this thing. It was looking great. And they're like, well, we're going to leave it to Kimishima to announce the release date. But first, do they kick it to the trailer, or does Kimishima?
I think because like Reggie's like, oh, okay, like Miyamoto, when is this game coming out? And Miyamoto's like, don't ask me, ask him. And so he's like, Aonuma, when is this coming out? And he's like, right. I can't tell, like, I don't know, you'll have to ask like Kimishima. And so they toss to Kimishima. Kimishima's like here's a trailer for Breath of the Wild.
Oh yeah, and he even teases it out even longer, where he's like, I do have the release date, but we'll get to that in a second. Then kicks it to the trailer. Again, just in terms of emotional reactions, I was not prepared to have while rewatching a video game presentation from 3 years ago. This is a stunning trailer. It is such a good demonstration of what this game actually is moment to moment, and like peppering it in with all of the like dramatic cool story beats, and the music is huge. It's just so powerful. This trailer rules.
It's stunning. Like this, and this was another one where I was like, it really makes me want to like replay this game, and it made me so excited that a
100%.
sequel is coming at some point because, yeah, like the trailer is like so beautiful, the music is gorgeous, and it just reminded me like all last night I was on cloud nine because I was thinking about Breath of the Wild, and I was like, I think this is my favorite game of all time. Like I don't know that it's like like the best game objectively or like a perfect game, but like the my experience playing that game was amazing, and I'm a little bit worried where I'm like, man, like I'm at a different place in my life than I was back then. Like, am I going to be able to like have that same sort of experience when the sequel comes out?
I mean, I'm excited for the sequel as well, but like watching this trailer almost made me go like, should I go and get lost in Hyrule again? Like I think it's been long enough that I don't remember my way around. I don't remember how like everything in the game works. That just like the impulse to like delete my save in Mario and start over. Like I'm kind of getting the hankering to do Breath of the Wild again.
Yeah, I think it's been long enough. Oh, I know, but like what if I mean, Nintendo recently likes to announce games like 8 weeks before they come out. Like what if we are living in a world where the Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out this like holiday?
Mark, there's no way. There's no way Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out this year. Like just none. And then of course they end the like the trailer like comes to a proper end, like blackout, hold for a second, and then the release date of March 3rd. This is a Nintendo Switch launch game. And that's sort of the whole ball game, right? Where it's like, here are all these varied and interesting software experiences that you're going to have that are going to be deep. They're going to be inclusive. They're going to be Mario. They're going to be third party. They're going to be Japanese. They're going to be monolith. They're we've got all the bases covered, and this amazing looking Zelda game. And like it's the story we're still telling now about like, oh yeah, the Switch outsold the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One in the month of April, put together. So like it's, I don't know, I watching the end of this thing got me so just like pumped up, and I was like, yeah, Switch, yeah, Nintendo.
It's such a mic drop to the end of this presentation because that's it.
True.
The release date comes up, there's the Nintendo logo, and then it's like, bam, we are out. Like that's it. End of presentation. Stream over with. But I could talk about this trailer forever because like it's so beautiful. The music in this trailer is so good. Do you know what it reminded me of is the music that we got, because the music that's in the trailer is amazing. It is not featured in the game. And it reminded me of like the trailer that we got for Rise of Skywalker, which had like
I was just gonna say that. Yeah.
arrangement of like the Star Wars themes, and in like an orchestration we had never heard before. And like it got me hyped in the same way that like the Zelda trailer did, where we got that Legend of Zelda theme, but in like an orchestration we had never heard before, and it was so like epic.
Yeah, so epic and so big. Oh, God. Okay, so obviously we loved that trailer, but looking at the presentation holistically, I think there are two things I want to discuss about it before we get out of here. One is, do you recommend that anyone go back and like check this thing out if maybe they hadn't seen it or haven't seen it in 3.5 years, like you and me?
Yeah, I feel like it's like there are parts that are weirdly dry, but I don't know if like it's just my experience, and I don't know if other people would have this experience as well. But even just watching them like delineate the features of the Joy-Con, I found to be enjoyable and comforting in a strange way. And so I found this entire presentation to be incredibly watchable.
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of emotional reactions watching this thing, and I realized so much of my 2017 is tied up in my experience with the Switch and my experience with you doing this show, but also my experience with my buddy Andrew, where his in 2017 his parents' house burned down. He lived in Santa Rosa, California, or his parents did. He lives in DC, and the house burned down in the fires out there, and I went up one weekend to like help him dig through the like sort of ashes of his parents' house. Like the thing just burned all the way to the ground, right? And it was one of those things where like I left at like a moment's notice, and it was the weekend that Breath of the Wild, or not Breath of the Wild, that Mario Odyssey came out. And so like Sarah went to pick it up from Best Buy because I had it on pre-order, and they needed like me to send a copy of my ID, or like it was a big dumb like ordeal. But like it'll always be locked in my brain when I went to help Andrew and his parents, because it was the weekend that it was October 27th, the weekend that Mario Odyssey came out. And like earlier in the year, after Zelda had come out, Andrew and I were both in Chicago for our friend's wedding, and we were playing a ton of Breath of the Wild. And like, I don't know, the Switch and those two games are so tied up in like how I spent that year with my friend. You know what I mean? And like that's just the two of us. But then like you and I have also had I don't know, it's that 2017 was like the year you and I turned our friendship back on, basically. So like the year was so good, and having this reminder of all these games that came out during that time, I don't know, it just felt great. I'm like tearing up a little bit now talking about it. So if you have my life and my life experiences, I recommend that you watch this presentation right now. It'll be very cathartic for you. And then the other question I wanted to ask was, what do you think this portends for the next time Nintendo has hardware to announce? Because, hold on, I'll give a little bit more framing for it. Because in 2011, when they revealed the Wii U, they were still doing stage presentations for E3. They had not yet moved to the Nintendo Direct. I believe that's not until like 2015 or 16 or something like that. But they did, revive the sort of stage show to do it for this reveal, not as part of E3. Do you think a future like mainline hardware reveal is going to come in a stage show like this, or in some other way?
I like really hesitate to even hazard a guess, because I feel like Nintendo is so unpredictable. Like, we felt like we were in such a rhythm with like Nintendo Directs where we were like, it's predictable, like we know when these are going to happen. And then just like this past week, Furukawa was like, maybe we won't do Nintendo Directs anymore. Like there's a time where they won't make sense for us. And it kind of blew my mind a little bit. And it's like, yeah, I have no idea. I feel like I can't even like hazard a guess. It feels like a really natural sort of like presentation in a way for them to show off new hardware. But I feel like one of the things that we appreciate about Nintendo is they're constantly like trying to do new things, and sometimes it works and like sometimes it doesn't, but they're just because something's worked in the past doesn't mean that that's what they're going to do again.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I think that there are probably some ways where this was the show that Kimishima wanted to put on, like that, like the Nintendo president is probably going to be dictating a lot of how they are getting their message out there. And so much of the face of Nintendo has changed, like Reggie's not there anymore. Kimishima's not there anymore. And, even recently we've seen the indie guys, both Kurt and Damon are no longer working with the company. So like, I think, to your point of like, who knows if they're going to be doing directs in the future? Who knows if they're going to be doing stage shows in the future? Like everything. First of all, who knows when the next hardware is going to be, and who knows what it's going to be? Is it just going to be Fat Switch? We don't know. Or is it going to be something else entirely? Are they releasing like a Game & Watch? Or I would love that. Yeah, it's just it's a huge question mark. And one of the things I love about Nintendo is that their history doesn't tell you anything about their future. All right, Mark. I think that's all we have to say about this thing. Let's close this out. But of course, I would love to know what everyone else thought of this. If you are watching along with us, we would love to get your reactions. If you want to write into us at Nintendo Cartridge Society at gmail.com. And let us know. And even, you can reach back into your own memories and remember this thing. And if there's anything that we missed, please let us know. You can also let us know on Twitter. On Twitter, I'm at Patrick_Ellers. Mark's at MK Mitchell, and the show is at NinCart Society. Remember, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. If you like the episode, share it wherever you share stuff. Olivia Duncan made our logo. Our theme music is provided by 8-Bit Betty. You can get more of his music by going to 8bitbetty.com or by listening right now. For my co-host, Mark Mitchell, this is Patrick Ellers saying thank you for listening.
You shall not pass! Up listening to this new hilarious Real Play podcast starring a real-life 6-year-old.
You see a giant red dragon and just a belch of fire just as it flies straight towards you.
And I just walked past it.
Check out the D&D Adventures of Coke the Kinder Giant on Campfire Media.
Campfire.